Hey everybody, this is Mike Denny in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and today I'm doing more or less a consumer report type video on Time Warner. This would be locally, but with regional and nationwide implications or applications as well. This applies regionally and nationally as well. Woke up this morning realizing I need to go out and buy a DOCSIS 3 modem because I signed back up with Time Warner 2 or 3 months ago. It was actually 3 months ago now, in September of 2014, and it was a cold call from a person who, if you're familiar with Time Warner's cold calls, they are regional. They're most often coming from California or regions that may or may not have service in your area. They may not have certain services that Time Warner offers, certainly. So the person you're talking with may be offering you something and calling an area that they maybe shouldn't even be calling for particular packages that they're offering. In my case, they did have the package. It was $89 a month. Everybody's probably familiar with it. Found out immediately after accepting it that it was available with a better deal in many other regions. 50 megabits per second download speed, 10 or I think it was 20 up, which is really high. No, it was 50-10. I'm sorry. Mine that I took, that I accepted, was 30-10, which is 30 megabits per second download speed, 10 upload. This was probably, in retrospect, misquoted by the rep, by the cold call marketer from Time Warner in California, or wherever she was. I usually try to make small talk with them and get where they are to see how my billing is going to go and if there will be any issues. It kind of gives you a foreshadowing. But in this case, I accepted it. I had recently had a little nightmarish episode with Dish, whose hardware is the best in the world, but whose sweetheart deal is rather surprising, about twice as bad when you go back off of it than Time Warner's. Their surprises that you encounter are probably twice as bad with Dish, and they're really not nice people. They're not particularly nasty, but they are very stubborn, and they are wrong, so I had to report them to the Better Business Bureau and basically get out of a contract that they implied that I had signed up for last year, a 2-year contract, when I had never even seen the 2-year contract. And to prove my point, they said that they had a copy of the contract, but it didn't have my signature on it, so I had to insist. I'd never been shown that contract. Apparently a local contractor was so busy trying to sign up new customers for them and installing the dish, the hardware, that they hadn't bothered to tell their customers this was a 2-year contract, which many people in many regions, especially rural, would know, but I'm in a location close to the city and all this stuff, so no. Anyway, back to Time Warner. This is more or less a video rant, but with a script. So I woke up this morning and my RSS Tech news feed described how we would be seeing Time Warner is apparently going to raise our rental, they call this rental fees, on their hardware. I call it a hardware fee. They're making you pay because you're using the hardware. Now that's justifiable, but there's many instances where you'll find that they're deliberately deceitful about which hardware will work. And I'm definitely familiar with this concept in general, having had numerous issues with signal strength with Time Warner in the past, which caused me to go to Dish in the first place, in which Time Warner, actually before them, previously owned locally by Insight, who Time Warner bought out, insisting that my hardware was the problem. Well, it wasn't. I'm a tech, I'm a nerd, I build home theater computers. I learned home networking first because I had to make my home theater computers look great. So I don't know anything about bad. I mean, I know enough about bad and good home Wi-Fi to know that it wasn't my fault. I could take my hardware across town to my girlfriend's house. She has the same package. She has more people on her in her neighborhood than I have. I'm in an almost semi-rural area right on the outskirts of town with 2 or 3 people on my entire line, where she would have between 20 and 50 on hers. and I took my hardware to her house, and it never failed. It never failed to give the speeds that were advertised. And back then, I was getting a lot of flack from Insight, which became Time Warner, about that it was my fault. I had to contact the BBB back then, got results as usual because I was right then too, and I actually, to divvy up the difference, they had charged me 9 months where I was getting signal strength so poor a mini box wouldn't even pull it in. So how that was my fault, I would never know. I've never made a mini box, but make a long story short, they were wrong before, and I think they're wrong again. But I'm going to go over some of the issues. I've written them out, I've outlined them, and hope I can follow it because it's kind of frustrating when you wake up to this. But, okay. First of all, when I sign back up the new deal, we're going to separate these issues into billing, hardware, and service issues. First of all, the billing issues. Everybody's familiar with cable companies in general, and Time Warner having notoriously been one of the worst companies in the world, rated phenomenally the last 2 or 3 years. They've just climbed to the top of the list. One of the largest corporations in the world. We're talking one of these mega, if it was a Robocop, this would be that type of corporation, that big. They're trying to take over the world. Well, Time Warner is huge, to say the least. They have no business not investing in the infrastructure, much less trying to promote good customer service in their ranks. But I think their corporate structure is so geared towards their 1% that they're never going to get any better. They tried recently. I dealt with some CS customer service reps on the phone who were helpful. They did act nicely towards me, and some things were resolved. That I just got the creeping feeling that overall things were not getting better, and I did not address this with them. I actually told them again and again, I'm realizing more and more it's not the tech's fault. Just because I'm an irate customer doesn't mean I have to have that attitude with the person on the other end of the phone. By the end of the phone call, they have the power to make or break you. Just like a cop doesn't have the power to convict you or judge you or put you in jail, but you better be nice to the cop who pulls you over because, hey, things could get worse or things could get better, and he's not going to have that emblazoned on it's not on his badge, make or break you, officer make or break you. But basically, I've gotten a lot better about dealing with phone reps in general, and that was after seeing a couple of YouTube videos based on how they feel by the first hour of dealing with grumpy people. But that hasn't helped Time Warner's corporate structure overall. Back when it was Insight, locally, a guy named Michael Wilner, I think, was the actual owner, and I got so sick and tired of seeing his commercials where he went into people's houses, made soup for them and stuff like that, because he's the guy who's so homey and interactive, and he's just your buddy that he wants to become familiar with you and get more customers that way. But you couldn't even post on his blog without having it deleted. If you couldn't send him an email to his email address and even get an auto reply. Yeah, so that's a bunch of bunk, and he's just making more money. When he sold his shares in Insight, I'm sure controlling, he probably made billions. I'll never see $1 million in my entire life, so I don't understand that, and I don't think I should be expected to. Okay, first of all, so I'm going to go over billing, hardware, and service issues. Billing. When they sign you up, they could be calling a cold call. Their telemarketer, could be calling you from Nevada or California, and have a list of packages that are available to Time Warner customers in that area. But by the end of the phone call, you'll realize that they may not be available in your area, because when it comes time for them to actually sign you up, they have to put you on hold, and it's a long hold. It's like 5 to 10 minutes because they're getting so much new business. They have to wait for their super to come around and say, oh yeah, that is available, or that isn't available in that region. So they call you, hook you on a deal. At that point, it may not even be in existence. Moving on, like I said, mine was. The stuff you get as part of the deal, their hardware, stinks. It's terrible. When you're dealing with their internet, you're dealing with a gateway, okay, with the package deals where you get TV, internet, and phone. They always add that phone, which I really reject. I hate it. I don't want to use it. I'm about to buy a modem that's not even a telephony modem, because I'm going to pay for the deal I got that offers phone, But recently my phone with their gateway hasn't even been working. Their telephony service hasn't been working, so what's the point anyway? It's useless. It may or may not be cheaper than I can actually get their TV and internet for, but it's cheaper than I used to get it for, so I haven't called about that yet to verify that. But regardless, with the news, and I'll post links in the description of this video, this morning's news that our worst fears are confirmed, that they are going to go up on their rates. They're not that much, but see, they're creeping, and their hardware stinks, so it's more than justifiable, more than ever, to go out and buy your own modem and router. I suggest separately, even though I've owned a gateway before myself, and I'll go into that now because there's some things that are relative to that. I'm going to cut the video, and I'll go into that right here. Okay, when you're renting a Time Warner gateway, gateways in general, they're not that great. Usually, you're better off, as most tech nerds will tell you, with a separate modem and router. The overall consensus is that it's just too much to pack into one device for them to make good ones. The all-in-ones, the gateways, they call them. You have gateway settings on your router, and you have gateway settings on your modem, but a hardware device called a gateway is just a modem/router. And most often than not, they're crappy. They're really slow. They're much slower, more often than not, even newer ones, than if you bought those items separately. And much of it has to do with the modem part. The settings allow you, if you buy separately or even rent separately often, the modem settings will allow you to better control what the router gets, and what you use from there is your business. Whereas if it's all in one, we're going to segue into why that's better or who that's better for. If you rent a gateway from Time Warner, there's a reason that they offer gateways. It's so they can control all of your internet experience more readily. That's why they're more than ever asking you, well, do you have another router connected to our gateway? Which, the gateways provide the Wi-Fi to your house as well as the modem, modulating the modem part. But the gateways allow them more intimate control of how your internet works via firmware updates. Those can come on the hour, by the way. They can come a lot quicker than they used to, or a lot quicker than you think. You do need to check into whether users are reporting that these modems that are available for purchase will work with Time Warner or not, because you can't trust Time Warner. I will post that link in the description as well. They've been lying to people, and they've been sued for lying to people regarding their lists that they have online of hardware that works with their system and hardware that doesn't. Two main issues: they're saying many good hardware doesn't work when actually it does, and there in issue 2, part 2 of that, actually 1.1, is that many times you'll catch them offering that same hardware that's a good, affordable piece of hardware. On one hand they're saying it doesn't work, and on another page they're saying, yeah, but you can rent it from us. So anyway, that was part of the lawsuit. So those hardly ever get settled, and the reason they haven't been settled yet is most of the time these aren't class action. It just seems like lawyers don't line up for class action lawsuits against one of the largest corporations in the world. They'd rather be on their side. So until that happens, and I think the FCC and the FTC need to get more aligned with the consumer needs than they do the corporate at this point. They're not too happy about helping consumers. They're too concerned with being fair, and their ears are towards the corporate interest. I mean, if politicians are accepting more corporate, and laws continue to be passed in favor of more corporate donations to politicians, then why not?